And welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you today again. And with me today, a very, very special guest and a friend, a colleague and a friend, Martin Duffy. He's a PhD like me. He's going to be here in the role of your meeting doctor. So we'll be talking with Martin Duffy as in capacity of a meeting doctor. Martin, welcome and glad that you can be here with us.
Thanks, Paul. Lovely to be with you.
Let our audience know a little bit why should we call you a meeting doctor, Martin?
Yeah, good question. It's one of these things that happened a little bit by accident, to be honest. So ways back in 2010, 2011, actually, just as the last major economic problems hit us. So 2009, I started with a master's degree in strategic management, and out of that, I had a wonderful supervisor for my thesis, and I felt maybe I should consider looking at PhD level research. And my focus at that point was very much on strategy and strategy development. I very quickly got introduced to an organization, a company that agreed to take me into their meetings. And ostensibly, the aim was to look at strategy and strategy development and then strategy implementation. And that naturally took me into all of their meetings, from board level all the way down to daily or weekly operations team meetings. But about 6 months into that data gathering phase of my PhD research, I discovered that I was a participant observer in all of the meetings. So I was about 80% observing and about 20% participating. But the observing part allowed me to take a perspective on the meetings collectively that I had never really seen before. So I had been involved for 10 years in facilitating multiple types of meetings in the whole area of strategy development. But I'd never really taken the time to step back from the meetings and take an overview of what was happening in them. So that was the first surprise. The second surprise was that my focus shifted then from strategy into looking at meetings themselves as my topic of exploration, if you like. And I suppose the essence of the PhD that I eventually submitted and got approval for was that we can look at our meetings as a collective resource for the organization. Whereas traditionally, if you look at any of the literature, or even if you just stop somebody on the street and ask them about meetings, they'll say, "Oh, not another meeting." How many times have we all heard that expression? But when you start thinking about them differently, and when you look at them differently as a collective resource, then you can do an awful lot more with them than we might traditionally expect that we can do. And I strongly believe that we can significantly improve our productivity from our meetings, or we might take the opportunity to do less meetings, but have the same amount of productivity, in which case we free up resources to do other things, which ultimately can improve the productivity of the whole organization. So I suppose I took this very broad overview of meetings and generated some new thinking around how to think of them in systemic terms, communicative terms, and sense-making terms, rather than just as the next meeting that I have to go to. So that's how I came to be involved to the extent that I am with meetings at this stage.
Fantastic, and that definitely qualifies you as a meeting doctor, and it's really a pleasure to have you here, Martin, and taking our time here in this afternoon to talk a little bit more about our passion, how to make collaboration more effective among human beings, and definitely meetings are a key part for that collaboration. So as we plan to do this series and meeting doctors, we will like you to raise challenges. So whatever you have, like a meeting challenge, please in advance share that with us, and we'll try to discuss it here live with Martin Duffy on regular basis. I hope that at least once a month, Martin, that's the challenge, right? Once a month we can be here and address all these big nasty meeting challenges that you may have. But today, this is the inaugural session of the Talking to Your Meeting Doctor event. edition, and we have selected something from the internet to have like a basis for our discussion. So I will apologize in advance for the sound quality, because this is perhaps not the ideal video stream we are going to use. But as you can see from the screen right now, we are taking advantage of an interesting video posted by Vibor Chandel, which is an agile coach and a renowned agile coach and consultant. And he raises a number of interesting points about how to make meetings more productive. And one of the points that he raises is lack of preparation, right? So this is a point that we have found here, we identified here in the reason why normally meetings are unproductive are lack of preparation. So bear with me for these few minutes where we'll show this argument here. I hope that you will turn up right on your screens.
Reason number one, lack of preparation. Lack of meeting's purpose, clarity, or proper agenda shows that there was little or no preparation done for the meeting. This isn't only just bad on your part for your personal brand, but it can easily trigger the fear of unknown and induce anxiety among the invited audience. Reason number two, fear of rejection.
So that's the starter of our conversation. Lack of meeting preparation. Martin, that's true, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, how many times have any of us sat through meetings where we don't know what the meeting is about? Actually, there's an interesting statistic, Paul. There's a company called Meeting Quality, run by Calvin McGrath. You're familiar with it, Paul, based in Sydney.
I am. He's a co-author. Calvin is a co-author on our book, right? So beyond virtual meetings, one chapter is dedicated by Calvin to meeting quality.
Yeah, and I had the privilege of co-authoring on that particular chapter with Calvin. But one of the points that what meeting quality does is it effectively surveys people in a very short, succinct way at the end of meetings. But significantly, it does it over time, and it accumulates the data from all of the different meetings in an organization that the organization chooses to survey. But one of the simple questions is, what was the purpose of the meeting that you attended? And have a guess at the proportion of people who didn't know what the purpose of the meeting or why they were attending the meeting in the very first place. And that figure is actually, what do you think, Paul, that figure might be?
I mean, I would say that in an organization in the West or even in Asia, where there's lots of competitive and well-organized organization, I would expect that 60% of the participants will know about their meeting objectives up front.
Yeah, in actual fact, the figure quantified over time is that approximately 13% of people don't know why they're at a meeting. Now, if you think about that in terms of preparing for a meeting, how can you possibly prepare for a meeting if you don't know what the meeting is about? But let's go back to one of the earlier points that we made. If you want to improve the productivity of your meetings, if you could just exclude that 13% of people who don't know why they're there, you've immediately got a 10% productivity bonus for those people going someplace else and doing something else that they do know what they're actually doing. So the concept of preparation can be at the totally individual or personal level. And I think that's what our video contributor was speaking to in the very first instance. But I'd expand it. And again, I suppose I'm drawing on my own experience of meetings in general. And I'm definitely drawing on my experience from having researched at the PhD activities. And it's that organizations don't actually prepare their meetings. So let me take, for example, Paul, you've got a very detailed background in sales and marketing. Isn't that correct?
Business development, I will call it.
Okay. So if you imagine business development, and if you said, we don't actually have a plan for the next 6 months as to how we're going to go about business development, would that seem unusual to you?
Well, in many companies that I know, it's not unusual, and unfortunately.
Okay, that's interesting. So if we look at that, And you say, intuitively, you would imagine we should have some kind of a plan because we're going to commit a lot of resources, time, money, energy in order to sell or promote our products. But if we didn't have some kind of a plan for that, you would be questioning it and saying, are we really going to be able to succeed if we don't plan it? But now think about your meetings. Think about the cost in time, in money, in resource, in facilities that get wrapped up in meetings. But how often do we actually plan the meetings collectively so that they're bringing us to some place as a destination, so that we maximize the benefit of each individual event, and so that we don't waste a valuable resource that we commit to them? But almost no organization that I've ever interacted with has taken that collective approach to planning and preparing their meetings as a resource. But one of the interesting things that I found, and I only discovered this after it had happened. So as I went back through my data that I collected from my PhD, as I was monitoring or reviewing each of the transcripts of meetings, so whether it was from board level or right down to day-to-day, week-to-week meetings by production teams, the meetings were actually connected to each other from all of the different levels in the organization, but they weren't done in a deliberate way. So the connections more happened by accident rather than by design. But where they didn't happen, I saw massive opportunity to design in connections between the meetings, which would end up giving you significantly more efficient use of the time and the resources that you committed to those meetings. So something as simple as the scheduling or sequencing of different meetings for different groups. So again, if you could imagine it a little like a relay team, okay? And if you think a relay team of 4 people running around a 400-meter track, and they have to pass the baton from one group to another. So imagine a group, imagine you've got a sales team, and the sales team identify a gap in the marketplace, okay? If they don't connect in some way to the research and development team meetings, how will the research and development people ever know where the gaps in the marketplace are that they should develop product for in order to help the sales team to do better sales? If the production team doesn't connect its meetings to the sales team and to the research or to the research and development people, how can they know what quantities to produce, what formulations to use, what ingredients to use? And if they don't connect through their meetings in some meaningful way to the logistics people, the supply side, whether we're taking in raw materials or whether we're shipping out our products, then we end up with each group having its own individual set of meetings, each meeting becoming its own little microcosm. But without that interconnectivity, we actually lose a significant amount of the potential efficiencies that are in there in the organizations. But we need to connect our meetings in more deliberate ways in order to extract the full benefit or productivity. And that was one of the key findings from my own research and the particular company that I had the privilege of working with, because I worked with them for 1.5 years. I sat through more than 60 of their meetings at every level. And over that period of time, it was the ways in which they connected or failed to connect their meetings highlighted how they could be productive and constructive, or in some way, let's call it spinning their wheels, where they were much less efficient in the use of their meetings than they otherwise could have been. So we saw their highest productivity when they had their highest level of meeting connectivity. And I think in that context, again, another colleague of ours that contributed to the book Beyond Virtual Meetings, Elise, who has written the chapter on From Lucid Meetings. And Elise's proposition of looking at your meetings as a system of meetings. She's going to speak to that at your event on the 21st, Paul, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Definitely. But don't call it my event, because it's our event. It's the event of all the digital facilitators in the world that want to gather together on the 21st of December, the winter solstice celebration.
Super.
So it will be your event too, Martin, as a facilitator.
Yeah, and I suppose when we think, I just want to have a look at the topic that Elise is going to speak to, meeting flow modeling, and that's a concept that Lucid Meetings in particular specializes in. And the book that Elise has written, again, is very informative to give us a concept of preparing our meetings at an organization conceptual level first, so that we think about the types of meetings that we're going to set up. We think about the flows of those types. So, for example, let me go back to the example that I gave you there. Supposing we have this idea of a sales team that has identified the gap in the marketplace. But we can then ask ourselves, so how might they hold, what type of meeting would they hold in order to collect their wisdom about that gap in the marketplace, how to define it so that they can pass it on in a structured way to the research and development people within our organization. So those types of workflows is some of what Elise talks about in the meeting flow modeling concept. Now that happens at a whole organization level initially, but that's a key part of meeting preparation, in my view, that most organizations actually don't pay enough attention to.
Definitely, and this is quite interesting, this concept of meeting flow, because we normally tend to see meetings as a cadence, and we don't take a step back to plan those cadence meetings as a way to fulfill a larger goal for the organization. And that's a really interesting insight you bring to this conversation, Martin. Should we move on to with the video? Should we look for the next step on the fear of rejection?
Yeah, we can certainly have a look at that. Why not?
Let's have a look at that. So I will share the second part. The second video that we have here for you is the fear of rejection. Let me share that here with my StreamYard studio. I hope that the sound reaches you well, folks.
Yeah, I'm not getting any audio on that one at the moment, Paul.
You're not listening?
No, I'm not getting any audio on that, I'm afraid.
Oh, the audio is not going through. Okay, let me.
There might be a mute or something on the.
Thanks for that. Let's repeat that now with the audio on.
Now, as human beings, we fear rejection in forms of interaction, be it job interviews, business dealings, dating, marriage, etc. The fundamental thought behind this fear is, what if I am wrong? Now, this makes people go out of their way so they could avoid confrontations. Such people refuse to ask what they want or even speak up for what they need. They just shut down their needs and pretend that their needs do not matter. We will talk more about this and different ways to go about fixing it in the next video. Reason number 3.
Okay, that's the reason number 2. So we would like to comment on that, Martin. Fear of rejection, and what could digital facilitation can do about it?
Well, in actual fact, I think what's particularly interesting that we've all seen from the pandemic is we've seen an absolute explosion in virtual meetings. That's the first thing. I think the second thing that we observed, maybe like the consequence of that, is the diversity of participants in meetings has significantly increased in my experience. In a previous life, Paul, before I got involved in my consulting work, I worked in aviation for almost 20 years. I was a pilot for most of that time. And as that extended into my consulting work, I had the privilege of working with the European Cockpit Association, which is an umbrella body for professional pilots across all of Europe. And one of the intriguing aspects of that, two things. We had so many different nationalities that we had to interact with. So we obviously had innate language challenges and barriers, notwithstanding that English is the primary language of aviation. But a very interesting point that comes out of having multiple people or multiple nationalities with multiple languages in our virtual meetings is the time required for people to process a conversation that is not in their native language. And us English speakers, and particularly any of us who don't have a second language, we don't always show ourselves as the best empathizers for this particular challenge. But the fear of expressing ourselves in a language that isn't native to us can become a significant barrier to people contributing at meetings. So again, it partly feeds back to the preparation piece, so that if we give people a better sense of what the meetings are about, if we give them a better input to the agenda preparation, if we circulate the agenda in advance, if we ask people in advance to prepare some of their thoughts or ideas, to even just to jot down bullet points, that can give people a better basis on which they can overcome any anxiety that they might have about participating. And not only if it's language-based, but because of the way that virtual meetings have pulled in so many nationalities. So you and I could now be, you're speaking, I'm guessing, Paul, you're probably in, are you still in Spain or?
No, not today. That's
There we go.
I'm in Lisbon today, yeah.
Okay, so I was going to say you could be in Portugal, you could be in Lisbon, I could be in Dublin, I am, but I could equally be in any other part of the world. And whether it's day or night, time zones now don't matter. We can bring people together, multiple languages, multiple cultural backgrounds, and all of these.
Martin, I think we are losing you for a moment here. I think while Martin is probably regaining us in just a few minutes, I would like to have all my viewers here today to watch this upcoming digital facilitation conference we are organizing in the 21st of December. So for anyone of you that would like to attend this conference, you are my guests. This is free to attend, and we have already a number of keynote speakers that are going to generously share their knowledge on meeting facilitation, should we say. Elise Kitt is going to talk about meeting flow, which is something that she says nothing directly connected to facilitation. So I would say meeting architecture will be the overall theme of Digital Collab 2020, right? We will include here conversations about digital facilitation and also practical boot camps with certain digital tools that participants would like to share and experience. We are going to have, like, as a keynotes for the upcoming edition, Gary K.E., which is the director of the RAGE agency and a well-known expert in AV and collaboration technology, is going to give us a little bit of his vision for the future of collaboration technology. We are going to have Maulud Cesarelli, which is a renowned agilist, social innovator, and the author and the founder and host of Remote Forever Summit, which is the main summit on remote work. I'm also pleased to announce the contribution of Lieven Berthier, which is the segment marketing director of workplace at Barco. And Barco, as you know, is a leading collaboration technology firms, and is going to be able to talk to us on the 21st of December. Well, with now Martin back in studio. Martin, glad to see you back.
Yeah, sorry, Paul. I'm not sure what happened there. Technology might have let us down a little bit on that one.
Not a problem. I was just advertising the Digital Collab 2020, but now back with you in studio. So you're talking about fear of rejection, and already introducing you to the importance of having pre-meeting preparation, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I suppose some of the reservations that people have about contributing to meetings, and again, we can think of this in terms of the lost productivity. So supposing we have 10 people at a meeting, which is an average enough number. We'll have between, say, 6 and 12 at meetings generally. If we have 2 out of 10 people who don't contribute fully, we've just lost 20% of the potential productivity of that group's time. So if you think of it in those terms, you say, what would we need to invest in order to maximize the productivity that everybody attending a particular meeting can have? We can tell people in advance what the meeting is going to be about. We can ask people in advance to prepare their ideas, their thoughts on the different agenda items. We can equally ask people to give consideration to how they want to contribute, rather than just leaving it as a blank slate. So in terms of preparing the agenda, we can ask people for inputs there. So there are many ways in which we can actually enhance our inclusivity, our productivity, through better preparation before we actually go into the meetings themselves.
Definitely. So let's have a look at what are the comments here from our from LinkedIn. Let me see if you can watch what our colleague here says about meeting preparation.
3 tips to help you prepare for your meetings properly and get full participation from your team members. Number 1, start with a homework assignment. Now, this happens most of the time. As meeting organizers, we tend to share brand new information in a meeting and then ask for immediate feedback or opinion about it. Don't get me wrong, some people are okay blurting out an instant response, but most people are not. So give them time to think. Give them a homework assignment. Ask each person to write down his or her ideas on a given topic in advance. Then ask them to bring their written thoughts to the upcoming meeting for a systematic discussion where everyone at the table gets a turn in a round-robin fashion.
Okay, so this seems to be a very interesting tip, right? To prepare in advance for the meeting. And are we really taking advantage of latest technology offers to do this, Martin? In your view?
In my view, we're probably not. Again, one of the complaints that I've heard most recently put out is that people seem to be attending so many more meetings than before the whole pandemic, before we went to online. So maybe it's become a little bit too easy to start a Zoom call, to invite 2 or 3 or 4 people to come into the Zoom call without the necessary thought and preparation that our video is referring to there. So in that context, I think a little bit more consideration in advance in terms of the necessity for the meeting. Do we actually really need a meeting? But I think it again puts us back to thinking about the meetings at this broader level first, because if we know how the meetings are feeding, if how they're acting as carriers of the baton in the relay race, if we know what baton they're taking, that needs preparation. If we know what baton are they making, and then what are they handing off to the next meeting that they're connecting to, if we give thought to that part of it, then I think we have a much, much better chance of getting more engagement and involvement from the participants in meetings, which then means we'll get enhanced productivity from the actual participants that come along. I think another key part is we kind of assume, maybe it's a fear of missing out. Maybe there's a FOMO element to people attending meetings. If I don't attend, what will happen? So the idea of picking the participants in a meeting carefully for the diversity, their homogeneity, that they're all similar, that there's diversity, all of these elements go into getting the best productivity out of the meeting time that we invest. And it also contributes to the point that our speaker is talking to there, which is people's sense of anxiety about being willing to engage or contribute or partake. So the whole preparation is really important, but I think the fit for the meeting, for people to know what the meeting more broadly is contributing to, what the expectations from the participants are in what contribution they can or should bring to it. So there's multiple moving parts, and I suppose my overarching concern is that we don't spend enough time thinking about our meetings. We tend to just jump in, hold the meeting, and we'll wing it while we're doing the meeting. And I look at that and think there's a better way to get more value out of the time that everybody invests in that, you know.
Definitely there is. And let's take a last look of the video clip that we have prepared. Sure. Here. It's the challenge of the formal agenda building, and let's hear what we have here in this conversation from Vibor Chandel, and yep. Let's watch the intervention here, hopefully with audio
as well. Number 2, write a formal agenda. Now, this approach obviously takes a bit more effort on your part, but it works. Ask everyone to send you their thoughts on the homework assignment via email. Once you have each person's contribution in hand, you can decide how to order the discussion and then send out a full agenda along with everyone's response far enough in advance so that each person has a chance to think about everyone else's ideas as well. Consider making all the suggestions anonymous to avoid judgment or conflicts. Number 3.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. Making the suggestions anonymous, right?
Yeah, that I was kind of taken by that idea. In certain circumstances, I can definitely see where that would be highly beneficial. It would probably need to be organized a couple of days in advance to give people time to make their contributions. But more importantly, whoever is convening the meeting, to give them time to look through them, sort through them, figure out, do we have one meeting in this set of agenda items, or actually do we have multiple meetings? On that idea of preparing the agenda, Paul, I did a piece of work about 5 months ago with a group. I hadn't worked with the group before. They came to me with a problem where this group typically met once every 4 months, and they had no executive authority, but they were an advisory group that met about 3 times per year. And the biggest challenge that they faced, and this is partly why they came to me, they said all of their meetings seemed to degenerate into micro detail about individual topics, whereas they felt that their purpose as a group was to be broader. And we spent quite a bit of time looking at their agendas, because when I searched through why they were having the difficulties they were having, it turned out that they had very long agendas, but what tended to happen was, because of the lack of structure, because they didn't assign times to items, they didn't assign intended outcomes, whether it was, are we making decisions, are we just having discussion, are we sharing information, because they didn't tease through each agenda item, they typically ended up with, say, 10 or 12 items on the agenda. They had half a day for their meeting, but they discovered that we only got to item number 4 because we never structured the agenda with enough pre-thought in order to make sure that we either prioritize the 10 items and take off the bottom 2 or 3 priorities, or that we limit the time on the 10 items and we won't go over the time, but it gets us more focused on what each item is meant to produce from the meeting. So again, the idea of structuring the agenda, it can add very significantly to the productivity of the meeting. But there's another possibility here, and that is that, and again, I'll go back to Elise Keith's likely contribution on the 21st, Paul, because when Elise talks about meeting flow modeling, she's going to introduce the idea that instead of using one meeting to get all 3 steps in a process organized, so for example, generating new ideas, prioritizing the ideas, and then coming up with an action plan, instead of doing that all in a half-a-day workshop or in a full-day planning workshop, it might actually be more productive to say, let's have 3 2-hour meetings. Let's space them 1 week apart. Let's make sure that people have an opportunity to think between the different meetings so that the output from one meeting becomes input to the next. But now the type of meeting that we're actually going to have is going to be different over the 3 days. So the first meeting might be a brainstorming type of meeting, in which case the agenda could end up just being 2 items. It might be generate ideas, and it might be rank order the ideas. That might be it. But the next meeting might be to say, take the top 4 ideas from our ranking and now develop pluses and minuses, the advantages, disadvantages, the challenges, or the benefits that each might give to us. So again, there are multiple different ways to structure the meeting, the agenda for an individual meeting, or to spread the agenda across an appropriate set of meetings. And now we're not just making more meetings for their own sake. We're actually using the meetings as a collective tool to bring us from a starting point of a problem to an end point of a problem in a very measured, structured, thought out, constructive way.
Fantastic, Martin. Thank you so much for the insights you brought here. And I just would like to remind our dear watchers that we have here a number of, you can always obviously pick up the book from the shelves, our book in the Amazon. If you go to Amazon.com or wherever Amazon store nearest to your country, and select Beyond Virtual Meetings, this book will show up. It's co-authored by me, Martin, and a number of other renowned, what I call them, digital facilitators. These are renowned experts in meeting productivity, and their knowledge applied to the development of platforms that can extremely enhance meeting productivity in organizations. And with this conversation, Martin, what I realize is that the burden of preparing a high quality meeting also poses a threat to an organization, or not a threat, maybe an opportunity to an organization, is to try to consider the investment on hiring meeting productivity experts.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So this role of hiring a person dedicated to the productivity of a meeting could be a group facilitator. A group facilitator could be a good option. But I am sure already there are a number of organizations like with these agile coaches and scrum masters. They are becoming this kind of meeting productivity experts in their own organizations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I suppose, in part, Paul, as with any facilitator in a group, what they can bring is a kind of an independent, detached perspective. They can question practices and procedures and challenge things without having an agenda to run, other than in the interest of making this as efficient as we possibly can. And that's to save people time. It's to give people back some time to think, to reflect, rather than just marching from one meeting into the next meeting into the next meeting, in which case an awful lot of time can get wasted on doing multiple things simultaneously, instead of being able to focus in a more productive way on individual aspects of what's coming up at future meetings. There's no right answer to this, though. I think so much of this is context sensitive. It's context specific. So I don't think there's a right answer. And I think that equally goes to your point about having an external facilitator assist with developing this type of thinking. It provides a level of independence that is much more difficult to get internally in the organization. You don't have to bring a facilitator in full-time or anything like it, but they can bring perspectives at key points in these processes that can just add considerably more value to recover time for the organization to do what the organization does best.
Fantastic. So if you're enjoying this conversation, folks, please look at the banner I'm displaying right now, digitalfacilitation.eu. It's Digital Collab 2020 placeholder. Join us on the 21st of December for more conversations like these that we are organizing for that day. And Martin, thank you so much for being here with us today. And hopefully this is the start of a regular conversation with our viewers, our esteemed viewers. It's really a pleasure to be here for you and help you to become a more effective manager with better, more productive meetings.
Absolutely. Yeah, pleasure to be here, Paul. And if anybody wants to put any questions or put any challenging scenarios to us, we'll obviously be very happy to have a look at them, analyze them, and discuss them in this format. No problem at all.
Thank you so much, Martin, and see you soon. See you on the 21st of December, if not sooner.
Thanks. Good evening, all. Nice to work with you. Thanks.
Bye. Bye-bye.